Hi, I'm David Tomalin from Ciena, and today I'm here to talk to you about growing profitability and driving operational efficiency in an on-demand world. So today what I want to talk to you about is some of the trends in the marketplace, and we've touched on them a moment ago, the foundation blocks of how we build these networks for the future, and in particular around where does this lead us in growing revenue and driving the profitability through operational and capital efficiency in the much more on-demand world that we're seeing at the moment. If we look at the internet 1 year ago, this was a slide from 2013 from Intel, we can look at the way that the network shapes data, uses data. We have a huge amount of video, individuals watching video, both in from a film perspective when you're looking at Netflix, and very transactional when you look at YouTube. But also we see a huge amount of transactional activity through the use of applications, be it Pinterest, Twitter. And this identifies a way we're living our lives today in the modern world, where data is center. The traffic growth continues to grow at the, according to Moore's law, varying slightly between networks over time, but the fundamentals are still there. How we use the traffic is clearly changing. If we go back 10 years, we would have seen a huge amount of torrent network in this, BitTorrent. The environment changed, regulatory environment evolved, and that changed to become Netflix and YouTube. So the picture of this in 5 years' time, I expect to be different again. And we need to build networks, and we need to build infrastructure that can cope with those changes, but also allow us to drive revenue and improve our profitability of our business through that period. One of the key pieces of perspective that I want to take away from this one slide is the use of bandwidth doesn't denote its value. As an enterprise user, I don't care about Netflix, particularly. I don't care about YouTube. I do care that Salesforce CRM can be reached by my sales organization. I do care that my backups occur at a certain time. And we're in an industry that has not been able to capture so much of that differentiation in value to the end user at the moment, and we need to create an environment where that happens. And why is it going to happen? Well, we're in an app-centric world. The iPad came out around about April 2010, and that changed the way we fundamentally use the networks. We've seen it in the statistics of how the Internet Minute is made up, but equally in everyday usage, we use it ubiquitously now. I use Google Maps to come to this office to find my way here. My birthday was yesterday, and I used Facebook to say thank you very much to all the people who are wishing me a happy birthday. It's changed the way we live our lives. Now, how do we drive the revenue? How do we drive the opportunity from this is difficult. But one of the things that's becoming clear is a lot of these applications have moved to the cloud. They moved to an environment where we know that Facebook can flex their compute power at any stage. They can flex their storage at any stage. But they can't flex their connectivity. So the user experience is often gated by the ability of you to reach that cloud environment. We have the compute, we have the store. It is essential that we build an ecosystem that brings into that same infrastructure the connect function. We need the applications to be able to make the calls, both the application on your phone to ensure that you have the capacity end-to-end, but also the applications in the data center, ensuring that that data is replicated between the different data centers to ensure wherever you are in the world, it's a ubiquitous experience. One of the questions we had was around where is this market going? Where is SDN and NFV, which we're seeing as enablers of change in the marketplace, where is it evolving? And this is a report from analyst Mason earlier on this year. Cloud computing, we've seen the consumption economics over the last 4 or 5 years, meaning that a lot of enterprises are moving their functions into the cloud. And we'll continue to see growth in that fairly fundamental change. They can move the capital off their books, they can move to an OpEx environment and shape their business a lot more flexibly. And it's really only 2 years that NFV and SDN have been around in a meaningful way in our sector. But we're starting to see, right now, the growth of function virtualization, sometimes in the data center, sometimes at the edge, and also the ability to leverage the software-defined networks. And what do I mean by that? The software to look at the control over the entire operating environment that you have and leverage to change your operating paradigm. Why do we see this accelerating? We can discuss to a great degree the shape of these graphs. Why is NFV accelerating much faster? Fundamentally, we're changing the way we work as a business, we're changing the way the enterprises use data, and we're changing the way we deal with capital and OpEx spends. And that will fall through to these numbers. And NFV is probably the largest growth potential market that we see in the industry right now. So how does SDN feed into this? Well, the key part about SDN is it's open. We've come from an environment where a lot of infrastructure networks are built around closed environments, proprietary systems. And that puts a huge OSS operational overhead on the operator and the enterprises. SDN, leveraging things like OpenFlow and the Open Daylight framework, ensure that we are all working to the same solution. We need to tie in the application layer through northbound APIs to the control layer, and the control layer to the infrastructure through the southbound APIs. And the infrastructure doesn't just have to be connectivity. It, again, needs to be the compute. It needs to be the storage. It's the ecosystem. Okay, that looks at how you're sharing information between the network layers. However, you need to have intelligence about what's happening, understanding at any point of the day what is occurring in your network and what you're predicting to occur. Can you link into your change management? Can you understand if somebody is going to change a fiber in Amsterdam at 2 o'clock in the morning, does it affect any of your customers who've already booked bandwidth in your network? It's about tying all these operational systems together to start changing the way we communicate about the way the infrastructure is being used and automating it as much as possible. Having a change manager review all the changes in a network once a day for the next 14 days and having to do that it's not a scalable scenario for the future. We need to look at leveraging the analytics, data analytics, big data, all the lessons we're learning from that environment to operate the network. The environment needs to be multi-layer. We've touched on the fact that it is compute, it is storage, it is connectivity, and in particular around the connectivity domain, we need to look at the photonic network, the circuit switch network, the packet and the IP. Nothing should be seen in isolation. We're seeing this development right now with OpenFlow and Open Daylight service abstraction levels. So this is real. This is what's happening in the environment. And last week, Telefonica announced a multi-vendor, multi-layer SDN environment that they'd push to the market. The proof of concepts are there. We're learning to shape the way the industry is going to work. But amongst all of this, one of the key tenets is the way we view data connectivity is changing. The days in the past where you could take down a network for 4 hours is not acceptable to how we operate today. If we look at Black Friday last week, if you'd taken down the connectivity to a data center, which was running the billing and assurance for one of the big retailers, they would have lost hundreds of millions of pounds. That's not acceptable in the environment we work in. So we're going to look at one example of how SDN or SDN-enabled networks can be used in the environment of a modern enterprise. We're going to look at bandwidth on demand. We have a number of enterprises, and the enterprise goes to a portal. I'm an oil company, and I want to download or inspect my new geoanalytic information around a new oil field. And that's a massive amount of data. Or I'm a doctor. I want to see the MRI scans of my patient, and I want to look at it now rather than take a whole day to download it. So I want to book some bandwidth. I go to my application, which the MSP provides, and I schedule it in. I agree to pay a certain price for it, and lots of different operating environments around pricing. And the pricing engine can look at how many users at any time of the day particularly want to use that bandwidth. It can take historical information, it can take forward-looking information, and price accordingly, pretty much like an airline system would today with ticketing. You type in what you're willing to accept, how much you want for a certain period of time, and process it through. That's the very manual process. That's the way that many enterprises and carriers are telling us they need to introduce the platform into the market. However, there's a better way of doing it. Once we start to get traction, once we start to build these networks that can flex dynamically, actually what you want is you want that doctor to know what his budget is, have that programmed in the system, putting caps on it, whatever, you need to manage to it. And when he wants the service, it does it within a certain profile and works out, can he use it now, process it through, so it becomes invisible to the user. What they care about is being able to carry out a task. They don't necessarily want to do it manually in the longer term. And gaining experience with our customers today on how they're going to market with these environments also enable us to work with them to understand how much can be automated and how much needs to be manually configured. Now we look at NFV. NFV has a different perspective. I'm an enterprise, I'm a bank, I'm a insurance industry, and currently I wander down into my data center. I look in my data center and I see 25 different boxes that I've brought over the last 3 years. Some are firewalls, encryption servers, CPE routers. I've got a WAN optimizer when I need to manage my bandwidth because I'm on a static bandwidth network. I need to check my bandwidth. I've got the performance testers. I have to maintain all these units. I need to maintain them in my data center. I need to maintain my licenses, my support services, the environment around them. I need people within my business who understand the hardware as well as the software. Whereas in reality, as a modern IT operator, I'm thinking, you know what, can I just put this in the cloud? Now, that cloud may be a single server unit that sits out as a virtualized CPE in my customer environment as a tail circuit termination, or in the bank, which is in your high street, or it could be a virtualized function within my core data center. There's lots of options. And it's about building an environment which allows you to do that. The advantage is you don't have the capital cycle. You don't have to go through a deployment environment where it takes 6 months to get it into a particular building. You can shape your business based upon the needs of today rather than the possible needs of the future. As a service provider, one of the other things that this enables you to do is start changing the conversation. Instead of the customer buying the box independently, you can now offer them services about encryption. You can virtualize them, you can push them to the customer quickly. You can enable them to link their connectivity with the services that they use over it. It makes your environment, your relationship with the customer a lot more sticky. And you can also shape it so that you create an environment where you pay as you earn, where there's a lease structure, where they lease the services off you, you lease them off the license holder, like the firewall vendor, rather than having to buy it up front. And one of the things that Ciena is doing in particular is looking at creating this environment with a range of customers, looking at the operational paradigm and the go-to-market. We have a VNF marketplace where we have a number of applications that are aligned to particularly the enterprise sector. But by themselves, they don't enable you to do anything. So one of the key things around our approach, and we believe is going to be a trend in the industry, is creating the operational framework which allows you to extract and leverage those applications, push them down into the hosts, be they in the network, be they in the enterprise location, or even a third-party cloud environment. Keep track of the licensing, manage the operational support calls around it, manage the OSS-BSS integration so that we can have a common API to send billing information so you can bill your customers accordingly and help you shape your business. Now, this is VNFs as a service. This is an environment which is going to rapidly adapt in the ecosystem that we're in today. It's a solution which enables a number of businesses to work with providers such as Ciena to do a build, operate, transfer. You may not be, as an MSP, ready to leverage this and build this yourself right now, but it may be part of your strategic plan. We need to create an environment which is much more agile, which enables you not to have to worry about going and approving an encryption vendor, which may take 6 or 9 months. We would verify, bring it to the market, put it in the marketplace, and just like any application that you use on your phone, you have an expectation when you download it that it's going to work in a certain way, and we manage to that. And it drives much faster revenue into your business process. So as we summarize on SDN and NFV, it allows us to optimize the use of our assets, using data analytics, using the infrastructure and the common APIs to understand the infrastructure through our entire network. We can look at how we spend capital, how we use capital, the network efficiency, different times of day. Can we provide offerings a certain type of day to drive higher efficiencies? So we maximize the network efficiency as much as possible, improving our return on capital. We virtualize our assets. And one of the other paradigms, which is probably the biggest challenge to our industry, is we create an environment which can simplify the way we operate networks. It will challenge some of the existing paradigms about the separate transport group, the separate IP group. They need to work together. And in fact, that's probably the biggest challenge we face in our industry. It's the human element. It's the change management of our business. The technology is there, but we need to help those companies get over those hurdles. And we need to leverage that data. We need to drive incremental revenue. We need to make the pie much bigger. We talk much about the fact that in our industry there's a relatively static amount of revenue from connectivity services. However, if we could show that you don't need to go and buy a certain level of servers and manage these operational environments around these applications and hardware that goes with the applications, you can virtualize all of it, then your connectivity becomes more critical. and you start to provide that as a much more solution wrap to your end enterprises. So you open up a much larger discussion to increase the available market to you as a business. Using the analytics, you can start using, you can seek information about how your customers are using the network and start to differentiate with pricing for time of day. And most importantly of all, time to market comes down. The time when you're operationally trying to turn up a service may be 30 days, 6 months, 9 months in some instances. We need to fundamentally remove that from our industry, because during that time, you're paying out on OPEX for resources for your deployment functions, as well as capital which you've had to acquire to turn up that service. By removing that and accelerating it, it accelerates your time to cash. And the functions of an SDN world, in particular aligned to virtualization, enables us to do that as an industry. So I'd like to thank you very much. I hope that's been informative, and if you have any questions. Thank you, David.